Welcome to English in Fluency. I am your host, Alex, and I am so incredibly happy to see you here today. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone, maybe a friend, a colleague, or a teacher, and you are following along perfectly? You understand every single word they are saying. You feel confident. You feel great. And then, suddenly, they change their tone a little bit, and they say something like, "Let me give you an example," or "Think of it this way," and almost instantly, your brain just panics. You nod your head, you smile, but inside, you have completely lost the thread of what they are talking about. If that sounds familiar, please do not worry at all, because you are absolutely not alone. This happens to almost every English learner at some point, especially when you are moving through that intermediate level. Today, we are going to fix this together. We are going to dive deep into B1 English listening practice, but we are not just going to listen to random words. We are going to focus entirely on understanding examples and illustrations. We are going to train your ear to catch the exact phrases people use when they want to explain something more easily. By the end of our time together today, you will be able to follow explanations in English without that horrible feeling of getting lost. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let us jump right in. To understand why this is so important, we need to talk about how real people actually speak. When you are learning English from a textbook, the language is very structured. Everything is clear and direct. But real life is messy. Real life is full of abstract ideas. When people talk about their feelings, their jobs, their plans, or a problem they are having, they are often talking about things you cannot physically see or touch. Because these ideas are invisible, the person speaking has to find a way to make them visible in your mind. They do this by giving you an example. They do this by painting a little picture for you, which is what we call an illustration. If you miss the example, you usually miss the entire point of the story. But here is the good news. People are actually very predictable when they are about to give an example. They use specific signal words and phrases. They leave little breadcrumbs for you to follow. Our job today is to learn how to spot those breadcrumbs. Let us start with the most common phrase in the entire English language for this situation. For example, I know you probably know this phrase already. You have seen it in books. But hearing it in real, fast speech is completely different. When native speakers say, for example, they do not say it slowly. They usually swallow the words a little bit. It sounds more like, for example. It becomes almost one single word. The trick to catching it is to listen for the rhythm. When someone is explaining a rule or a general idea, their voice will have a certain rhythm. But right before they say, for example, they will usually take a tiny pause. They might say something like, "There are many ways to stay healthy. For example, you could go for a walk." That tiny pause is your brain's cue to wake up and pay attention, because the most important part of the explanation is coming right up. Let me show you what I mean with a little story. Imagine a woman named Sarah. Sarah works in a big office, and she is talking to her coworker, Marcus. Marcus is new to the job, and he is feeling a little overwhelmed by the company rules. Sarah wants to help him understand the rules about taking time off. She does not just read the rule book to him. That would be boring and hard to understand. Instead, she uses an example. She says to Marcus, "The most important thing to remember about our vacation policy is that you need to request time off at least 2 weeks in advance. For example, if you want to take a week off in August, you cannot ask for it at the end of July. You have to ask for it in the middle of July. Now, listen to how Sarah did that. She stated the general rule, which is ask 2 weeks in advance. Then she used the phrase, for example. Then she gave a specific situation about August and July. If Marcus only heard the first part, he might still be confused. But because Sarah gave him that example, the abstract rule suddenly became very concrete and very easy to understand. This is exactly what you need to train your ears to catch. Do not just listen for the rule. Listen eagerly for the for example, because that is where the real learning happens. Now, another phrase that is incredibly common is for instance. People use for instance in exactly the same way. They use for example. It means the exact same thing. The only difference is that for instance sounds just a little bit more casual, a little bit more conversational. You will hear it all the time in coffee shops, in living rooms, and in friendly offices. Let us imagine a different situation to see how this works. Picture a man named Liam. Liam is trying to explain to his friend Chloe what his new hobby is. He tells her that he has started doing upcycling. Chloe has no idea what upcycling is. She thinks maybe it has something to do with riding a bike up a hill. Liam sees her confused face, so he knows he needs to explain it differently. He says, upcycling is when you take old things that people do not want anymore, and you change them into something beautiful and useful. For instance, last weekend I took an old wooden ladder that was broken, and I turned it into a shelf for my books. Do you see what Liam did there? He gave the definition of upcycling, which was still a little bit confusing. Then he said, for instance, and he described the wooden ladder. Suddenly, Chloe understands perfectly. She can see the ladder in her mind. She can see the books on it. The phrase, for instance, was the bridge between her confusion and her understanding. When you are listening to someone speak English, and you hear the words, for instance, treat it like a green light. It means the speaker is about to make things very clear for you. We also have a phrase that is a little bit shorter, but just as powerful, such as, this phrase is slightly different from for example or for instance. We usually use such as right in the middle of a sentence, without pausing, to list a few specific things that belong to a bigger category. Let us go back to our friend Chloe. Now imagine Chloe is talking to her sister, Elena, about eating a healthier diet. Chloe says, I am trying to eat more food that has good fats in it, such as avocados, nuts, and olive oil. Chloe did not pause. She just flowed right from the general idea of good fats into the specific examples of avocados, nuts, and olive oil, using the phrase such as, when you are listening, such as can sometimes be hard to catch because it is spoken so quickly. It often sounds like such as. But if you are listening for it, you will realize it is a fantastic tool. It tells you exactly what category the speaker is talking about. If you did not know what good fats were, Chloe's sentence gives you the answer immediately, just by using those two little words. Another incredibly common way people give examples in spoken English is by using the word like. Now, I know you know the word like as a verb, meaning to enjoy something, or as a preposition meaning similar to. But native speakers use like as a conjunction all the time to introduce examples. It is extremely informal. and you will hear it in almost every casual conversation. Imagine a guy named David. David is talking to his brother about a terrible date he went on. David says, "The restaurant was awful. There were weird smells, like old fish and dirty carpets, and the music was so loud." Here, David uses like to give examples of the weird smells. He does not say, for example. He does not say such as. He just says like. It is fast, it is natural, and it is very human. When you are watching movies or listening to podcasts in English, pay attention to how many times people use like to give you an illustration of what they are talking about. It happens constantly. If you can train your brain to hear like as a signal for an example, your listening skills will improve dramatically. Now we are going to move to a slightly higher level of listening. Sometimes people do not just give you a simple example. Sometimes they have to explain a very complex idea, and a simple example is not enough. In these situations, they will use an illustration. An illustration is like a long, detailed story that proves a point. It is a big picture example. When someone is about to give an illustration, they use different phrases. They might say, "Think of it this way," or "Let me paint a picture for you," or "Imagine a scenario where." These phrases are magical because they tell your brain to stop thinking about facts and start thinking in images. Let me give you a very clear example of this. Imagine a woman named Sophia. Sophia is a financial advisor, and she is talking to a young couple, Ryan and Olivia, about investing their money for the future. Investing money can be very confusing. There are stocks and bonds and interest rates. It is very abstract. Sophia knows that if she just uses big words, Ryan and Olivia will not understand. So, she changes her strategy. She says, "Investing your money is like planting a tree. At first, you have to dig a hole, put the seed in, and water it. It looks like nothing is happening. You might even feel a little silly. But underground, the roots are growing. Years later, that tiny seed is a huge tree that gives you shade and fruit. Think of it this way. The money you put in the bank today is the seed, and the tree is your retirement." Wow! Do you see how powerful that is? Sophia could have talked about percentages and graphs. Instead, she used the phrase, "Think of it this way," and she told a story about a tree. Suddenly, a very difficult financial concept becomes something a child could understand. When you are listening to a lecture, a presentation, or even a deep conversation with a friend, and you hear someone say, "Think of it this way," or "Imagine," you need to lean in. The speaker is about to do the hard work of making things easy for you. They are handing you a mental picture. All you have to do is accept it. Let us try another one of these illustration phrases. Picture this. This is a fantastic phrase. It is so friendly and inviting. When someone says, "Picture this," they are literally asking you to create a movie in your mind. Let us put this into a real-life context. Imagine two friends, James and Mia. James is trying to explain to Mia why he quit his job at a big, successful company to start his own small business. Mia thinks he is crazy. She tells him that he had a secure salary and a nice office. James says, "Picture this. It is Monday morning. It is raining. You are sitting in traffic for an hour just to get to a building where you sit in a tiny room under fluorescent lights, staring at a computer screen, doing work you do not care about, just to make money for someone else. That was my life. Now, picture this. It is Monday morning. It is raining. I am sitting in my kitchen with a hot cup of coffee, wearing my comfortable clothes, working on a project that I built from scratch, and every penny I make belongs to me. James did not give Mia a list of facts about his old job versus his new job. He used the phrase "picture this" twice to create two completely different scenes in Mia's mind. By comparing the two pictures, Mia instantly understands exactly why James made his decision. The emotion of the illustration does all the explaining. When you hear "picture this" in English, get ready for a story. The speaker is trying to make you feel what they feel, so you can understand what they mean. There is one more set of phrases that we absolutely must talk about today. These are the phrases people use when they realize they have confused you. These are rescue phrases. Have you ever been talking to someone and you can see their eyes glaze over? You can see that they do not understand what you are saying. A good speaker will notice this, and they will change their approach. They will use phrases like, "What I mean is," or "Let me put it differently," or in other words. These phrases are a speaker's way of saying, "Oops, that was too complicated. Let me try again with an example." Let us listen to a conversation between a teacher, Daniel, and a student, Emma. Daniel is trying to explain a grammar rule to Emma. He says, "A dependent clause cannot stand alone as a complete sentence because it leaves the reader hanging." Emma looks completely lost. Daniel sees her face and immediately changes his tactic. He says, "Let me put it differently." If I say, "Because it was raining," that is not a full thought. It makes you ask, what happened because it was raining? You are left waiting for the rest of the idea. What I mean is, it is like hearing half of a joke. You never get the punchline. Daniel used two rescue phrases, "Let me put it differently," and "What I mean is." And then, to make absolutely sure Emma understood, he gave her an illustration. He compared the grammar rule to hearing half of a joke. This is exactly how native speakers navigate conversations. They are constantly checking to see if you understand. And if you don't, they use these phrases to bring you back on track. As a listener, when you hear "Let me put it differently," you should feel relieved. It means the speaker is about to make things simpler for you. You do not need to panic about the thing you just missed, because they are going to explain it in a new way right now. I want to take a moment to talk about the emotional side of listening. Learning to listen in a second language is exhausting. It takes a lot of mental energy. When you are having a conversation and the person starts using big words or abstract ideas, it is very easy to feel stupid. It is very easy to feel like you will never be fluent. But I want you to completely change how you think about this. When a native speaker uses an example or an illustration, they are not doing it because they think you are stupid. They are doing it because explaining things with examples is just how human beings communicate. We all do it, even in our native languages. If I tried to explain to you what a zebra looks like using only facts, I would say it is a quadruped with black and white stripes. That is accurate, but it is not very helpful. But if I say, "A zebra looks like a horse wearing a striped pajama shirt," you instantly know exactly what I am talking about. The example is not a sign of weakness. The example is the highest form of clear communication. So, when you are struggling to follow an explanation in English, do not get angry at yourself. Just wait for the example. It is always coming. Now that we have talked about all these wonderful phrases, I want us to do some real practice. I am going to tell you a few short stories. In these stories, The characters are going to be explaining things to each other. Your job is to just listen. Do not try to analyze the grammar. Do not try to translate the words in your head. Just relax and listen for the signal phrases we talked about. Listen for example, for instance, such as, like, think of it this way, picture this. And what I mean is, when you hear them, let your brain naturally focus on the words that come right after them. Are you ready? Let us begin. Here is our first practice story. We have two characters, Noah and Isabella. Noah is a chef at a restaurant, and Isabella is a new server who just started working there. Isabella is asking Noah about the concept of umami, which is a specific taste in food. Noah says, umami is a very deep, savory flavor. It is not sweet, it is not sour, it is not salty, and it is not bitter. It is its own unique thing. For example, when you eat a piece of aged cheese, or when you take a bite of a fresh tomato with a little salt on it, that rich, satisfying taste that makes your mouth water, that is umami. Think of it this way. If sweet is a light, refreshing breeze, umami is a warm, heavy blanket wrapping around you. It is a comforting taste. What I mean is, it is the kind of flavor that makes you feel full and happy. Did you catch the phrases? Noah started with, for example, and listed aged cheese and a tomato. Then he used think of it this way and compared the taste to a warm blanket. Finally, he used what I mean is to summarize the feeling of the flavor. Even if you had never heard the word umami before in your life, by the end of Noah's explanation, you know exactly what it is. That is the power of listening for illustrations. Let us move on to another practice story. This time we have two friends, Ethan and Aria. Ethan is trying to explain a new video game to Aria, but Aria has never played a video game in her life, so she is very confused. Ethan says, the goal of the game is to gather resources so you can build a shelter before nightfall. Aria frowns and says she does not understand. Ethan takes a deep breath and says, let me put it differently. Imagine you are stranded on a deserted island. Picture this. The sun is going down, the sky is turning orange, and you are standing on the beach with absolutely nothing. You need to find wood before it gets dark. Otherwise, you will be cold and unprotected. For instance, you might go into the forest and chop down a tree with a rock, and then use those pieces of wood to build a small wall. What I mean is, the game is basically a survival test, but it is digital. It is like playing a digital version of the survival shows you watch on television. Ethan was so patient. He saw Aria was lost, so he used let me put it differently. Then he used imagine and picture this to set a vivid scene of a deserted island at sunset. He used, for instance, to explain how to get the wood. He used what I mean is to compare it to television shows she already knows. Every single time Aria's brain might have drifted away, Ethan used a signal phrase to pull her back in and give her a clear mental image. This is exactly what you will experience in real English conversations. People want you to understand them, and they will use these tools to help you. Let us do one more practice story to really cement this in your mind. In this story, we have a grandfather named Arthur and his granddaughter, Lily. Lily is a teenager, and she is asking her grandfather what it was like to grow up without the internet. Arthur smiles and says, it was actually a lot slower. We did not have instant answers to our questions. If I wanted to know a fact for my homework, I could not just type it into a phone. For instance, if I had to write a paper about frogs, I had to walk to the local library, find the right aisle, pull out a heavy encyclopedia, and flip through the pages until I found the word frog. Lily looks shocked. She cannot imagine life like that. Arthur laughs and says, "Think of it this way. Today, information is like a fast-moving river. It flows right past you constantly, and you just have to put your hand in to catch it. Back then, information was like a deep well. You had to crank the handle, lower the bucket, pull it all the way back up, and hope you got some water. What I mean is, we had to work a lot harder for simple facts, but because of that, we usually remembered them forever. That is a beautiful illustration, isn't it? Arthur used, for instance, to describe the physical act of going to the library. Then he used think of it this way to compare information to a river and a well. That comparison is so strong. You can see the river, and you can see the well. Finally, he used what I mean is to explain the result of all that hard work. If Lily was practicing her English listening skills, she would not need to understand every single word Arthur said. She just needed to catch those 3 phrases, and the meaning of his entire story would unfold perfectly in her mind. I want you to notice something very important about all the stories we have talked about so far. In every single case, the person who was explaining something could have just stopped at the facts. Sarah could have just told Marcus the rule about the vacation policy. Liam could have just read Chloe the dictionary definition of upcycling. Sophia could have just shown Ryan and Olivia a graph of their investments, but they didn't. They chose to add examples. They chose to add illustrations. They chose to use phrases like, for example, think of it this way, and picture this. Why? Because human beings are storytellers. We understand the world through pictures and experiences, not through dry facts. When you are listening to English, you are not just listening to a language. You are listening to a person who is trying to share their experience with you. They are throwing you a rope to help you climb into their mind. All you have to do is grab the rope. The signal phrases are the knots in the rope that make it easy for you to hold on. But we are actually just getting to the really good part. A lot of students think that once they know a few signal phrases, they have solved the puzzle, but listening to real English is a bit more complicated than that. Sometimes people do not use the exact phrases we just talked about. Sometimes they use much more casual, sneaky ways to give you an illustration. And if you are not ready for them, they will slip right past you. Let us look at some of these hidden examples. One of the most common ways native speakers give an example without actually saying the word example is by using the word say. They will say something like, let us say you are walking down the street, or say you want to buy a car. The word say in this context does not mean to speak with your mouth. It means imagine. It is a shortcut to creating a hypothetical situation. Imagine a man named Oliver. Oliver is giving advice to his friend Hazel about saving money. Oliver tells Hazel that she needs an emergency fund. Hazel asks how much money that should be. Oliver does not say, for example. Instead, he says, well, say your car suddenly breaks down and you need a new engine. That is going to cost a lot of money, right? If you do not have the cash saved up, you will have to put it on a credit card and pay a ton of interest. When Oliver said, say your car suddenly breaks down, he was painting a picture. He was giving an illustration. If you are listening to a podcast or a friend giving advice, and you hear them say, or let us say, your brain needs to instantly switch into imagination mode. They are building a little stage in your mind, and they are about to put actors on it to show you what they mean. This tiny little word is so powerful, and it is used constantly in everyday speech. Another very sneaky way people give examples is by using the phrase, take something. When a speaker says, take my brother, or take the internet, for example, they are inviting you to look at a specific object or person so they can use it as a model. Let me show you how this sounds in a real conversation. Picture a woman named Julianne talking to her coworker Gregory about the concept of introversion. Gregory thinks being an introvert just means being shy, but Julianne wants to correct him gently. She says, being an introvert does not necessarily mean you are shy. It just means that being around a lot of people drains your energy, and you need to be alone to recharge. Take my sister, for instance. She is the loudest person at a party. She loves talking to strangers. But after 2 hours, she completely disappears and goes to a quiet room to read a book. She is not shy at all. She just needs that quiet time to get her energy back. Did you catch it? Julianne used the phrase, take my sister. She did not say, for example. She just said, take my sister, for instance. She grabbed a real person from her life and put her right in front of Gregory as a living, breathing illustration. When you hear the word take followed by a person, a place, or a thing, get ready. The speaker is handing you a physical sample of the idea they are trying to explain. It is like when you go to an ice cream shop and they hand you a tiny spoon with a taste of the flavor. They are saying, here, taste this. This is what I am talking about. That is exactly what the speaker is doing when they say, take this situation, or take my friend. We should also talk about how people use examples to defend themselves or to argue a point. This is a very high-level listening skill. Sometimes an example is not used just to explain something nicely. Sometimes it is used as a tool in a debate. When people feel misunderstood, they will use phrases like, look at it from my perspective, or if you were in my shoes. These are emotional illustrations. They are designed to make you feel what the other person is feeling. Let us listen to a conversation between a husband, Theodore, and his wife, Penelope. Theodore is frustrated because he came home late from work, and Penelope is upset. Theodore says, you have to understand, I cannot just leave my desk when the clock hits 5 o'clock. If I do that, my boss gets angry, and the whole team falls behind. Penelope crosses her arms and says that he should just work faster during the day. Theodore sighs and says, look at it from my perspective. Imagine you are a doctor performing a surgery. You cannot just stop in the middle of the operation because your shift is over. You have to finish what you are doing, or the patient could die. Now, Theodore's job is not as serious as a doctor's job, but he used that extreme illustration to make Penelope feel the pressure he was under. He used the phrase, look at it from my perspective. And then he said, imagine you are a doctor. He knew that just saying my job is hard would not work. He had to create a dramatic scenario so Penelope could step into his shoes. When you are listening to people argue in English, or when someone is trying to justify their actions, listen for these emotional illustrations. They will tell you exactly what the person is feeling on the inside, which is often much more important than the facts they are saying on the outside. Now, I want to talk about a very specific problem that B1 listeners face. What happens when the example makes no sense to you? This is a very common situation. The speaker gives a beautiful, clear illustration, but you do not understand the illustration because it is about something you have never experienced. For example, if an American is trying to explain a concept by using baseball as an example, and you have never played or watched baseball, you will feel lost all over again. Let us see how a good speaker handles this. Imagine a woman named Clara. Clara is from the United States, and she is talking to her British friend, Sebastian. Clara is trying to explain the concept of a steep learning curve. She says, learning this new software has a really steep learning curve. It is like trying to hit a major league fastball when you have never even held a baseball bat before. You just keep swinging and missing. Sebastian stares at her blankly. He knows what a bat is, but he has no idea what a major league fastball is. Clara sees his confused face, and she realizes her mistake. She says, "Oh, sorry, bad example. Let me put it differently. It is like sitting in a university lecture for a subject you have never studied. The professor is speaking a different language, and you feel completely overwhelmed. You just have to keep going to class every day until your brain slowly starts to catch up." Clara saved the conversation. She realized her illustration failed, so she used a rescue phrase, "Let me put it differently," and she gave him an illustration about a university lecture, which is something Sebastian understands perfectly. But as a listener, what should Sebastian have done? If Clara had not noticed his confusion, he would have been stuck. This is why I always tell my students to learn about the culture of the language they are learning. You do not need to become an expert on American football or British cricket, but you should at least know the basic rules. However, if you do get hit with an example you do not understand, do not panic. Just wait. Usually, the speaker will give another example, and if they do not, you can use a beautiful phrase yourself. You can just say, "I am not familiar with that. Could you give me a different example?" Native speakers love this. It shows you are paying attention and you are trying hard to understand them. Let us do another deep listening practice. I want you to apply everything we have learned in this second half of our lesson. I want you to listen for the sneaky phrases, the emotional illustrations, and the rescue phrases. Close your eyes again if you want to. Relax your shoulders. Take a deep breath in and let it out. Here is the story. We have two characters, a manager named Victoria and an employee named Nathaniel. Nathaniel has been making a lot of small mistakes at work lately, like forgetting to send emails or showing up late to meetings. Victoria needs to talk to him about it, but she does not want to sound mean. She wants to explain the concept of attention to detail. She says, "Nathaniel, your work is generally very good, but we really need to focus on your attention to detail right now." Attention to detail is about noticing the tiny things before they become big problems. Take last week's report, for instance. You wrote a fantastic analysis, but you forgot to put page numbers on it. It made the whole document look unprofessional. What I mean is, when people read a report, they judge the whole thing by the small mistakes. Let us say you buy a beautiful new house, but the front door has a huge scratch on it. Every time you walk into the house, that scratch is all you look at. You forget about how beautiful the rest of the house is. The missing page numbers are like that scratch. They distract people from your great ideas. Think of it this way. Your ideas are like a sparkling diamond. But if you do not pay attention to detail, You are presenting that diamond inside a crumpled paper bag. Nobody will ever see how beautiful the diamond is because the bag is so messy. I want to help you take the diamond out of the bag. If you were in my shoes, you would want your team to present work that makes us look perfect. Let me put it differently. I am not angry about the mistakes. I just want to help you polish your work so your true talent can shine. That was a heavy conversation, but did you see how Victoria navigated it? She started by stating the general idea, attention to detail. Then she used take last week's report, for instance, to give a concrete fact. When she saw Nathaniel might not fully grasp why a small mistake matters, she used, say, you buy a beautiful new house to create a highly visual, emotional illustration of the scratch on the door. When she wanted to make him feel proud of his work, she used think of it this way to compare his ideas to a sparkling diamond in a paper bag. Then, to build empathy, she used if you were in my shoes. And finally, when she realized she might have sounded too harsh, she used let me put it differently to soften the blow and explain her true feelings. If Nathaniel was trained in the exact method we are practicing today, he would not have felt attacked. He would have heard those phrases and thought, oh, she is just giving me examples so I can understand her point. He would have focused on the diamond and the house, rather than feeling bad about the missing page numbers. This is the superpower of understanding illustrations. It protects you from negative emotions when people are giving you feedback. It allows you to separate the person's message from their delivery. Before we completely wrap up our time together today, I want to share one last very special story with you that ties absolutely everything together. I want you to sit back, take a deep breath, and just let the English wash over you. Do not try to analyze it. Just let the pictures form in your mind. Picture an old, dusty photography studio. The walls are covered in dark velvet, and there are big, soft lights hanging from the ceiling. In the middle of the room is a man named Felix. Felix is an older, very wise photography teacher. He is standing next to his student, Beatrice. Beatrice is holding a very expensive camera, but she looks completely frustrated. She is trying to take a picture of a beautiful glass vase filled with red roses, but the picture keeps turning out wrong. Either the roses are too dark, or the glass vase is glowing so bright that you cannot even see its shape. Beatrice sighs loudly and says she does not understand why the camera is broken. Felix smiles gently and walks over to her. He says, "The camera is not broken, Beatrice. You are just struggling with exposure. Exposure is simply the amount of light you allow into the camera. If you let in too much light, the picture is too bright. If you let in too little light, the picture is too dark." Beatrice nods, but she still looks confused. Felix sees this, so he changes his approach. He says, "Let me put it differently. Think of your camera like a bucket sitting out in the rain. The rain is the light. If you leave the bucket out in a light drizzle for a long time, the bucket will slowly fill up with the perfect amount of water. That is a good exposure. But what happens if there is a sudden, heavy thunderstorm? The bucket will overflow in seconds. The water spills over the edges and makes a mess. That is what happens when your picture is too bright. We call that overexposed. Now, take this glass vase, for instance. The glass is reflecting the bright studio lights directly into your camera lens. It is like a thunderstorm hitting your sensor all at once. The camera cannot handle it. Beatrice looks at the vase and her eyes widen a little bit. She is starting to understand. Felix knows he is getting through to her, so he pushes a little further. He says, "Picture this. Imagine you are looking out a window on a sunny day. If it is bright outside, your eyes adjust so you can see the trees and the sky perfectly. But because your eyes are adjusting to the bright sun, you cannot see anything inside the dark room you are standing in. It just looks like a black mirror. That is exactly what your camera is doing. It is looking at the bright reflections on the glass, adjusting for that bright light, and ignoring the dark red roses inside the vase. What I mean is, the camera does not know what is important to you. It just sees light and dark. You have to tell it what to focus on." Beatrice bites her lip and asks how she is supposed to tell the camera what to focus on. Felix laughs warmly. He says, "Well, say you are standing in front of a beautiful landscape. You want to see the green mountains, but the sky above is completely white because the sun is behind the clouds. You could just accept the bad picture, or you could use a filter. Let us say you put a pair of dark sunglasses over the camera lens. Suddenly, the white sky becomes a nice, soft blue, and because the sky is darker now, the camera adjusts and reveals all the beautiful dark green shadows in the mountains. In our case, we do not have sunglasses for the camera, but we can change the settings manually to do the exact same thing. Look at it from my perspective. I have been doing this for 30 years, and I still mess up the exposure all the time. It is not a mistake. It is just a puzzle. Every time you take a bad picture, you are just gathering information. If you were in my shoes right now, you would not be angry at the camera. You would be excited because you just learned that glass reflects a lot of light, and next time you will move the lights. Think of it this way. Learning photography is exactly like learning a language. At first, every sentence feels like a struggle. You stumble over the words. You take bad pictures. But if you keep adjusting, if you keep paying attention to the light, eventually, you press the button and everything just clicks. Was that not a beautiful way to wrap up our practice? Did you see the absolute masterpiece of communication that Felix just performed? He took a highly technical, invisible concept, camera exposure, and he made it something a child could understand. He started with a simple definition, and when Beatrice was confused, he used "let me put it differently." Then he used "think of your camera like a bucket in the rain," which is a classic, perfect illustration. He used "take this glass vase," for instance, to tie the abstract idea directly to the physical object in front of her. He used "picture this" to make her imagine looking out a window on a sunny day, connecting the camera to her own human eyes. He used "what I mean is" to explain that the camera does not have a brain. He used, say, "you are standing in front of a beautiful landscape," to introduce the idea of a filter. He used "look at it from my perspective" to build empathy and take away her frustration. And finally, he used "think of it this way" to compare photography to learning a language, bringing the entire conversation full circle right back to your personal journey. If you understood that story, if you could see the bucket in the rain and the window on the sunny day, then you are absolutely ready to go out into the real world and dominate your English listening practice. You do not need to be afraid of complex topics anymore. You do not need to freeze when someone starts talking about science, or business, or art, or cooking, because now you know the secret. You know that behind every complex topic, there is a Felix waiting to explain it to you with a bucket, or a window, or a pair of dark sunglasses. Your only job is to wait for those clues. Let the speaker do the hard work of painting the picture. You just have to sit back, relax, and watch the picture appear in your mind. Now, let us talk about how you can take all of this out into the real world. Listening practice inside a lesson like this is great, but the real test is when you are talking to a real person, or when you are watching a movie without subtitles. The very first thing you need to do is stop trying to understand every single word. This is the biggest mistake B1 learners make. You hear a word you do not know, and you freeze. You stop listening to the rest of the sentence because you are stuck on that one word. You have to let it go. If you miss a word, let it go. Keep listening, because the speaker is almost certainly going to give you an example or an illustration in the next few seconds that will explain the word you just missed. If you freeze, you will miss the example too, and then you are completely lost. You have to train yourself to keep moving forward, just like walking on a path. If you trip on a rock, you do not sit down on the ground and give up. You keep walking. Treat unknown words like little rocks on the path. Step over them and keep going, because the beautiful scenery, the example, is just a few steps ahead. The second thing you can do is active prediction. This is a fun little trick you can play with your own brain. When you are listening to someone speak, and they start talking about a topic that is a little bit abstract, start guessing what their example will be. Let them say the general idea, and then in your head, try to come up with an example before they do. For example, if someone says, "There are many benefits to living near the ocean," you can pause for a second and think to yourself, what would my example be? Maybe the fresh air, maybe the sound of the waves. Then, when the speaker says, for instance, "You can wake up and see the water every morning," you will feel a little spark of joy because you guessed the kind of example they were going to give. This simple mental game keeps your brain engaged and stops it from drifting off to sleep, which is what brains often do when they are processing a second language. It turns passive listening into active listening. The third thing you can do is to start using these phrases yourself when you speak. Speaking and listening are connected. If you get comfortable saying, for example, or let me put it differently, or picture this in your own conversations, your brain will become hyper-aware of those phrases when other people say them. It is like when you buy a red car. Suddenly, you see red cars everywhere. If you start using illustration phrases in your own English, you will suddenly start hearing them everywhere in movies, podcasts, and conversations. You will realize that native speakers use them constantly. So, the next time you are trying to explain something to someone and you see a confused look on their face, do not just repeat the same words louder. Say, "Let me put it differently," and then give them a simple example. Not only will this help your speaking skills, but it will rewire your brain to become a master listener. I also want to give you a little bit of advice about the tone of voice. When people give examples, their voice usually changes. Think about it. When someone is stating a fact, their voice might sound flat, professional, or serious, but when they say, "Picture this," their voice drops a little. It gets softer. They slow down. They become a storyteller. They might even take a breath before they start the example. You can use these voice changes as clues, even if you do not perfectly hear the words they are saying. If you hear the person's voice change from a fast, factual rhythm to a slower, story-like rhythm, your ears should perk up. Your brain should say, "Ah, they are painting a picture for me now. I need to pay attention to the images they are describing." This is a deeply subconscious skill, but the more you practice it, the better you will get at it. You will start feeling the shape of a conversation, not just hearing the words. I want to take a moment to talk directly to you about your journey. I know that reaching a B1 level in English is a massive accomplishment. You have already learned thousands of words. You have learned how to form complex sentences. You have learned how to read and write. But the jump from B1 to B2 and from B2 to C1 is all about listening. It is about learning how to process English in real time, without a script, without a pause button, and without subtitles. The techniques we talked about today, listening for signal phrases, waiting for the anchor, and letting go of missed words, these are not just little tricks. These are the fundamental habits of fluent listeners. You have to build these habits until they become completely automatic. You should not have to think, "Oh, he said, for example, I should listen now." Your brain should just naturally perk up when it hears that rhythm. And the only way to make it automatic is through massive amounts of repetition. You need to flood your brain with English. Listen to podcasts while you are washing the dishes. Listen to audiobooks while you are walking to the store. Watch interviews on YouTube while you are eating your lunch. At first, it will feel like a wall of noise. You will feel tired. But slowly, day by day, your brain will start picking out the phrases. You will suddenly hear someone say, "Picture this in a movie," and you will smile to yourself because you know exactly what is coming next. That feeling is the best feeling in the world. It means your brain is rewiring itself. It means fluency is no longer a dream. It is becoming a reality. I also want to remind you that making mistakes is a beautiful part of this process. Sometimes you will mishear an example. Sometimes you will think someone said, for instance, when they actually said for an instant. That is okay. It happens to me in my own native language sometimes. The goal is not to be a perfect listening machine. The goal is to be a curious, engaged communicator. When you are curious, you forgive your mistakes. You laugh them off. You keep going. Language is not a math test where there is only one right answer. Language is a living, breathing tool that we use to connect with other human beings. When you focus on the connection, and when you focus on the stories and the illustrations people share with you, the pressure disappears. Learning English becomes fun again. It becomes an adventure. Every conversation is a chance to hear a new story, to see a new picture in your mind. Before we say goodbye, I want to give you one final piece of homework. It is very simple, but it is incredibly effective. I want you to find a short video of someone telling a story in English. It could be a clip from a late-night talk show or a clip from a documentary. I want you to watch it one time without subtitles, just listening. But this time, I do not want you to try to understand the whole story. I want you to listen with a laser focus for just one thing. I want you to count how many times the person uses an example or an illustration. Listen for example, for instance, like, say, take, think of it this way. Keep a tally on a piece of paper. You might be shocked by how many times they use these tools. When you realize how heavily native speakers rely on examples to communicate, it takes the pressure off of you. You realize that you do not need to understand every single complex word they say, because they are going to explain it with a simple example right after. This exercise will physically prove to your brain that the anchor is always coming. I want to leave you with one final thought about fluency. A lot of people think that fluency means knowing every single word in the dictionary. They think it means speaking perfectly without ever making a grammar mistake. But I am here to tell you that is a lie. True fluency is about connection. It is about understanding the heart of what another person is trying to say. When you understand examples and illustrations, you are not just understanding words. You are understanding human beings. You are stepping into their shoes. You are seeing the world through their eyes. When a coworker uses an illustration to explain a problem at work, and you understand it, you are not just showing off your English skills. You are showing that person that you care about their ideas. You are building trust. You are building a relationship. That is the real magic of learning this language. It opens doors to human connections that you could never have otherwise. You have put in so much hard work today. You have practiced active listening. You have trained your brain to recognize signal phrases. You have learned to let go of missed words and wait for the anchor. You have learned to spot sneaky phrases and emotional illustrations. You have done the heavy lifting, and I am so incredibly proud of you for that. But this momentum we have built together right now, this beautiful energy, it cannot stop when this lesson ends. You have to carry it with you. You have to promise me that the next time you turn on a podcast, or the next time you talk to an English speaker, you will actively listen for these phrases. You will listen for the pictures. This is exactly why I create these in-depth, immersive lessons for the English in Fluency channel. I do not want to just give you a list of vocabulary words to memorize. I want to transform the way you experience the English language. I want to make you feel confident and powerful when you are surrounded by native speakers. If you felt the transformation today, if your shoulders feel a little lighter and English feels a little less scary, I need you to do me a huge favor. Please hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single one of these deep dives. We have so many more incredible listening strategies to cover together, and I do not want you to miss a single one. I also want to ask you to take a moment right now to leave a comment down below. I want to know what your favorite illustration was from today. Did you like the bucket of rain for the camera? Did you like the red car? Or maybe the bread baking in the kitchen? Tell me which picture stayed in your mind the longest. I read every single comment, and I replied to as many as I can. It is my favorite part of the day because it connects me to you. Finally, if you know even one person who is struggling with their English listening, someone who gets nervous in conversations, please share this video with them. Send it to them right now. You could be the reason they finally have a breakthrough. You could change their life just by clicking the share button. You have the tools. You have the strategies. You have the community right here at English in Fluency. Trust yourself. Trust the process. Let go of the fear, and just start listening for the pictures. I am Alex, and I cannot wait to see you in the next lesson. You are doing an amazing job. Keep going. keep smiling, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.